When you have to shoot, don't talk.
Hey everyone, this is Justin Jett of Hoosier Trapper Outdoors. Thanks for tuning in to the Trap House Podcast. We've got a couple sponsors here I want to mention before we get to the show. First off, we have J3 Outdoors, maker of the Hags Bracket. You can check out their website at j3o.com. He's got numerous products on there that makes your life and trapping much easier, especially if you're in the marsh or in the water, but not limited to just water. He's got the tail hook, the bait holders, the spring clips for multiple size conibears. Of course, the Hags Bracket, like I said. I am a big fan of the universal lock that he has. It, just like it says, it's universal. Works on chain, rod, wire, cable, you name it. Makes life simple, easy, quick, effective, and all good, great American-made quality products. So check out j3o.com. Also, we have Top Lot Stretcher Company. You can check out their website at toplotstretcherco.com. There's a whole line of trapping supplies there. Lots of goodies for the fur shed as well. We're big fans of the adjustable stretcher. So go check out their website. Once again, that is toplotstretcherco.com. And we also have Weeby Knives. Check out weebyknives.com. There's a great selection of knives there, either for skinning in the field or if you're in the fur shed and you need to flesh. There's several options there. Great quality products. We believe in them. And check out their website, weebyknives.com. And last but not least is HoosierTrapperSupply.com. Check us out. We have a full line of trapping supplies, starter packages, lure packages, you name it, we got it. We're home of the Top Dog Predator Bait and Jet Fuel Predator Lure. You've probably seen us out on the line using that several times in our videos on Hoosier Trapper Outdoors on YouTube. So head on over to the website and grab some goodies. Let's get to the show. All right, everyone, welcome back to another Trap House podcast. We got a good guest here. Nick Biggs is with us. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Good. We just wanted to have you on. We've been friends online, and we appreciate what you do for the trapping world and what you do to promote it. You promote it in a good light. You help teach people. So we just thought we'd like to chat with you, talk trapping.
My pleasure. I'm glad you guys, I'm glad you invited me. I look up to both of you guys, and my pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So if you would kind of get us started on how you got involved trapping. Did you start young or something came on later? Or?
Well, I would like to, I wish I had cool stories like Andy and Marty and those guys, but I mean, those guys are pretty difficult to top, but so it's kind of I don't know how much time we have here.
Whatever we need.
So I grew up in a family where my dad in the neighborhood was, and I've said this before and I'll continue to say it, he was the, if you will, the quintessential Jeremiah Johnson of our day. We, obviously we're involved in lots of things, sports-wise and things of that nature, but my dad was actually an older man, and he passed away when I was 23. He was actually 75 at the time. So basically, to make a long story short, like he couldn't keep us. I mean, he kept us involved in sports, but as we got older, he wasn't able to do those things with us. So when we were growing up, he introduced me and my brother to the outdoors, and that's just something from the time we hit the ground running. We were outside hunting and fishing and catching things, and so my dad was the guy in the neighborhood that anytime something needed to be caught or trapped or relocated, he was the man that people called. And one of the big things was snakes. Here in West Virginia, we only have two venomous snakes. We have rattlesnakes and copperheads. And I don't know, I think anybody that follows me knows that I'm a Christian, but he would catch venomous snakes and sell them to the local snake handling church. And so, yeah, so which is probably an hour from where I still currently live. They still currently have meetings. And I remember being a kid, we're young, me and my brother a year apart. So, we're 9, 10, 11 years old. And of course, my dad would catch these snakes and sell these snakes to these snake handling churches. And I remember one time, I would like to say I don't attend snake handling services, but we would go with him to sell these snakes. And, I remember the preacher there at the time was an old man. And of course, he invited my dad to a meeting. And of course, me and my brother were standing there, and I was thinking, oh gosh, I surely hope that he does not take this man up on his offer. But I remember my dad specifically saying, this man's telling us, you got to have faith to handle these snakes. And my dad said, God also gave us a brain with common sense. So we continued to sell those snakes and so basically growing up, we always were involved in the outdoors. And I guess the thing that, in terms of trapping, my dad was a retired electrician from the railroad. And he took jobs after he retired. He would rewire houses. And, we were at a house one time. Of course, my brother and I were little and small, so we got all the cruddy jobs of crawling around the attics and crawling around the crawl spaces, pulling wire and things of that nature. And I remember, and I specifically could take you to this spot now, but I remember one day we stopped for lunch, and there was this little creek behind this house that we were working at, and it had like mud banks. Of course, the water wasn't very deep, and we were down playing in that creek, and a rat came out of a hole in that bank. And of course, I at the time didn't know anything about rats. We called it a big river rat, scared us to death. And of course, we went up there and we're excited. We told my dad, and of course, at that point, he started showing us things about how to catch those things. And, I remember for the longest while, and of course, we would catch them and show up and we would have a foot in the trap. And it was so disappointing that it's like, he'd say, here's the traps. And of course, he kind of showed us the ropes. And then we trying to put 2 and 2 together and didn't realize that we needed to drown those things. And so I remember cutting coat hangers, like wire coat hangers, that we could put our carrots and our apples and things of that nature on. And then we used, at the time, we didn't know what it was, but it was rebar tie wire, to tie the trap off and, excuse me, set it up on something high that when that rat would fall in that water, it would drown. So I guess, to make a long story short, my dad, he just made sure that we were involved in hunting and fishing and trapping. And, we built cages for squirrels and rabbits and chipmunks and groundhogs and possums. And we just had a great childhood as kids. My dad kept us in the outdoors. And, unfortunately, of course, my dad passed away. And as I got older, I got a scholarship to play college basketball. And my brother, when we graduated, he went straight into coal mines. And so I kind of got away from it. We did, growing up, we did all this together. I mean, we were like inseparable. We were a year apart. Well, unfortunately, about going on 18 years ago, my brother was killed in a car accident. And, having suffered great loss, people deal with things different ways. And, that all the joy that stuff that me and my brother did together all those years, I do have good memories of it, but it was painful, to know that we were in tree stands together, or we were on the riverbank together, or we were in the woods together catching critters. When he passed away, it was kind of like, I don't really want to do this anymore without him. So I kind of went away to college. He went to mines. Anyway, he died. I came home, I got married, started a family. And of course, children have a way of changing things. And as my kids started getting old enough to realize, what the outdoors were, I obviously wanted them raised in the outdoors. And those, my kids kind of rejuvenated, that stuff that I had lost all those years. And I had a desire again to get them outside. And, for the last, I don't know how many years, that's pretty much what we've done together. They play sports, but we enjoy the outdoors together. And it was like when I came back and I got back into trapping, At the time when I was growing up, I don't know how it was where you guys are. We didn't have coyotes. We had fox, had a pretty good population of fox. Of course, it's all flip-flop now. We don't have any fox because the coyotes came. And so the equipment and things of that nature that we were using, obviously, and I'm not going to get into what that equipment was because I know unfortunately, how people can bash, certain manufacturers. And I'm not about any of that. I'm as drama-free as they come. But it didn't take me real long to realize that equipment wasn't going to hold up, to coyotes. And so I did, I have a room temperature IQ. I'm not extremely smart, but I was smart enough to know I need to ask somebody, what are people doing with these coyotes? And of course, I started asking around, and the name Buford Shell, great friend of mine, kept coming back to me. And he was the guy in our area at the time, and he still traps, but he was the coyote man. He still traps, but he kind of, introduced me to certain equipment and things of that nature and said, hey, this is the stuff that's going to hold up. You guys may disagree, and this is the great thing about trapping. I don't know how you feel about it, but I feel personally like the way I trap, if I can catch a fox, I can catch a coyote. I know some people say there's this big, you got to be, a fox is so much smaller, you got to be here and there. Well, and I'm good with folks disagreeing, because I know there'll be folks out there that disagree and say, hey, you're wrong. I'm good with that. I think if you hug the hole, I think if you make a dirt hole and you hug the hole, and that critter that you're wanting to trap wants what's in that hole, you're going to catch it. This stuff of like 9 and 2 and left and right, and knowing if a coyote's left footed or right footed, and how it's going to step. And, that's fine for folks if that works for them. So it wasn't a big adjustment in terms of catching the fox or catching the coyotes. It was just, the equipment had changed so much. And I really just put myself in contact with somebody that knew what he was doing, and kind of said, hey, this is what you need to be using. And we remain great friends to this day. So that's pretty much a story that's it in a nutshell. I mean, I could probably talk for days about that, but that's pretty much how I got into it. I got away from it for a while. And then, my kids kind of lit the fire back in me. So I got back into it.
So have your kids have pretty much taken off with it?
Yeah, well, I got let's see. Oh my gosh, I got a senior, I got an 8th grader, and my little girl's a 6th grader. And I would like to say that they're just ate up with it. But, my senior, he's got a girlfriend, and he's in love, and we all go through that. We all go through that stage. And, so he still does it. He bow hunts and things of that nature. My 8th grader loves it. He's ate up with it. I mean, anytime he can be outdoors, he's the guy that I drop him off in the woods during the summer on the creek bank when I go to work in the morning, and I pick him up on the way home. He's just completely ate up with it. Now, my little girl, she's tough as woodpecker lips. I mean, she gets out there and traps, and she likes it, but she's not like, completely ate up with it. But what I would like to say, and of course, I've heard you guys say this, and I think it's extremely important, is my kids may not grow up to trap. I would love to think that, every time dad goes out, that they were like, hey, I want to trap. But I can tell you what they will grow up to be. They won't be opponents of trapping. I mean, they've seen it. They've been on the line. They know how it works. They know how to be ethical. They know how to do things right. So one thing I think we got to realize as trappers is you may introduce 100 people to trapping. You may introduce 100 kids to trapping. And only 10 of those guys or gals, they end up trapping the rest of their lives. But I found out that earlier that we can introduce young people to trapping, look, we're not going to win the antis. Those guys are, they're crazy. I mean, I had a guy probably within the last year, he got my phone number because I advertised my nuisance business. And he started out as like a potential customer, like he just filling me out. And then we got into how we dispatch the animals, and if they all had to die, and if you had to relocate them. And of course, there's laws that I have to abide by as an ADC operator. And this man was convinced, and guys, in his heart, he was convinced, like I was trying to explain to him about mange and canines and things of that nature. This man was convinced that I should see a local vet and have that vet donate medicine that I can give these animals as I trap them and then turn them loose. And in his brain, he was convinced that was something that that's actually that we can do. And so I say that to say, like, we're not going to change their minds. No. I mean, they've made up their minds. And one thing about it is they may be crazy, but they are concentrated and combined, and they fight the same battle. And we spend our time as trappers worrying about whether a Pelt's prime or who's using this trap and who's using that trap. And so I think we got to spend time, especially with our youth, so that those folks grow up. They may not trap, but by golly, they're not going to be one of the crazies lined up in the PETA line saying, hey, you guys shouldn't be trapping either. Right. And that's kind of where I'm at with my kids.
We're completely on the same page. And when I think back when I was younger, in the 70s, trapping, and the people that were around then that were trappers and that may still be trapping, there's actually very, very few that carried it through their life. But if I run into them, they'll all say that it was really good memories and they understand it. And, like you said, they're not going to be, and I've seen some of them actually, if we have a natural resource committee meeting or something here in Indiana where there might be something that needs their support or whatever, some of them will show up in support of whatever is, a benefit to trappers or trapping. And they don't really have a dog in the hunt. I mean, it's just, they just believe in what we do and the importance of it. So
right. And so how many folks do you talk to that have never been exposed to trapping? And I live in a fairly small town. I mean, we have, we can drive an hour and get to Walmart, but so everybody knows everybody. And so how many times do you come in contact with people that have never trapped, but they know I trap? And, it's amazing to me, a lot of the questions about, how bad does it break the animal's leg? How bad does it, is it the animals, the coyotes are chewing their legs off, and they're like, and so if we can take the opportunity to, and that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about trying to get young folks involved is, you can show them, put your hand in the trap and show them, look, this is not some big steel tooth jaw trap that's going to, but it's amazing. And I know you guys deal with it too, at the number of people out there that they hear these things or they read them on the internet, or these groups like PETA and these other folks, they push this agenda that it's such a maiming device and things of that nature. And if there aren't folks like us that are willing to get out there and educate people, that's all people have in their brains when they think about trapping. And then when it does come time for legislation to be passed and something needs to be voted on, if all they know is that animal chewed its leg off or some nonsense like that, or using some maiming device, then there's a good chance that those folks they're going to be opposed to you. So, right. I mean, young people that's where it's at. I mean, young people's where it's at.
Yeah. Even a lot of the hunting community doesn't fully grasp or understand what we do, unfortunately. And they may very well fall into that group that's bought into this, at minimum, skewed information, and most of the time just plain not true information. And they'll fall right into, the opposition. So it's all comes down to getting the word out, education. And then I think we face this problem too. So we've got the segment of society that's against what we do, that will never be able to change their mind. Right. And then we've got a big part of society that probably just really doesn't care that much. Right. And, if they are the ones that basically, if it ends up on a referendum ballot, where, that type of decision, those are the ones that have to be targeted in all the advertising and media blitz or whatever to reach them, and a lot of them just aren't going to care one way or the other. And if in their eyes, if trapping became illegal on public land like it has in New Mexico, they probably generally don't care, Right. So that apathy and that non-connection to it is a big issue as well. So, but.
Right. And so for a while back, when we started talking about this education deal and what we're doing, guys, trapping has afforded me a lot of opportunities. I've some of my best friends in this world, I met on the trap line or that's what's so good about social media. I know it has its detriment to what we're trying to do. But at the same time, it's really connected me with lots of folks that have been very helpful in terms of what we're trying to do. And so I asked myself this question years ago, was like, trapping has been really good to me. I've just had all these memories. And of course, it's something I've got to do as I grew up, and I formed these relationships. And so then I asked myself, what am I doing for trapping? Yeah, I'm a member of my association. I'm a member of this organization. I'm a member of this organization. I pay my dues. But, my dad taught me, like, if you really want to make a difference, then you got to get involved. You got to put your boots on the ground, and you got to put one foot forward and do something. And I don't know if you guys want to talk about it, but, in terms of, how my little class came about.
No, yeah, definitely want to talk about it.
So one day I'm sitting at home. It's probably been, I guess, 4 years ago now. And I told Leanne, my wife, who she's a good trapper, but she's not ate up with it, but she can trap. And I love when she goes with me, but she does let me, we talk trapping and things of that nature, because she knows it's important to me. And I said, how would you feel about having a little get together? I said, let's have a little get together and we'll cook and grill out and just, invite some people. And because, to be honest with you guys, I live in the southern part of West Virginia, and, bow hunting's really big. And, there's a lot of guys that fish, but, up until probably the last 5 to 10 years, trapping was like, if you could name one trapper, it's like, hey, I know this guy. And half the time you name somebody that's some jackleg that shouldn't be out there anyway. It's not a legitimate trapper like what we're trying to do. So I told my wife, I said, let's have a little get together. Nobody will probably show up. I mean, honestly, if we get a couple people, that'll be great. We get to spend some time with them and talk traps and dye some traps, whack some traps. Well, gosh, guys, when I kind of put the idea out there, it just, like, people in my area were starving for it. I mean, they just, I live in an area where, outdoors is a big thing. And, like, I was just completely blown away at the first year that we did it, at the number of people that came and how far people came, just because they wanted to be involved in something in terms of how you trap. There's different takes on, like, well, YouTube's great and YouTube's not great. Well, here's my take on it. There are good trappers on YouTube that put out good information. And again, there are guys out there that put out stuff that I watch and I just cringe, and I'm thinking, I surely hope somebody's not watching that. So I took the opportunity to say, you know what, we're going to put this out there, see what happens. If nobody shows up, I can at least say, well, we tried. And guys, it was amazing the number of people that turned out that first year. And honestly, every year since, it's grown like crazy. And of course, this year, of all days, that hurricane came right through the Appalachians. I mean, it came. I started watching this thing like 10 days beforehand. And I told Leanne, I'm like, it's going to come right through our backyard. And she said, Nick, we don't get that kind of rain from hurricanes. They usually come up the coast and then they turn out to sea. And the more I watched it, I thought, this is going to be a disaster. I mean, this is going to be.
Yeah.
So I contemplated on canceling, and I'm like, of course, there's so many guys that come from different places that help, which I'm so blessed with those types of friends. I messaged them all and I said, hey, this is what we're looking at. It's talking inches and inches of rain. It's all day long. I won't be offended if you say, hey, I can't make it. So to be honest, now that it's over and it's done, I can be honest and say, I was just looking for a couple of those guys to be like, yeah, Nick, this is crazy. We can't come this year. Because if I lose all my help, it's kind of like, well, that's the easy out. It's like, well, guys, I don't have help, we can't do it. Well, you guys know how trappers are. I mean, you trap in the good, bad, and the ugly. And every one of those guys and gals were like, we're in, let's do it. So I told Leanne, I'm like, well, we're going to do it. Nobody's going to show up, but we're going to do it. Guys, honest to God, strike me dead. There were people pushing. It's pouring the rain, and I'm looking out in the parking lot, and there's so many cars. There's people pushing babies in strollers with umbrellas over them things. And I just had to say, thank you, Lord, because I could not believe that number of people showed up in that kind of weather. I know when I first started talking, I said, I thought I was crazy. I mean, I thought I was crazy, but you guys take the cake. I mean, for you guys to show up in this kind of weather to do this is just nothing short of amazing. And I think it just boils down to, there's some good folks in the trapping community that are willing to help. And it was a good day. I think we've reached a lot of people. I think we've helped a lot of young folks. And, I had one lady show up and she brought her 10-year-old son, and she introduced herself. She said, I drove 4 hours from Pennsylvania. She had called me the day before to make sure we were still having it. And I didn't think she would show, but she said, my son's been so excited. She drove 4 hours from Pennsylvania. And she said that his dad had passed away, and he wanted to trap. And she said, I have no idea how any of this works, but if my son wants to trap and I can do this, then I want you guys to help him. So we were able to, stuff like that. We were able to send that kid away with everything he needed to get started. He got good instruction that day. And that kind of goes back to that what I was talking about earlier. He may not trap. He may trap a year and be like, you know what, this is not for me. But the fact that he was introduced to it, he was shown how things work. This is what you can expect. I don't think he's one of those people that one of these days, 10, 20 years from now, we'll have to worry about him being, in opposition to what we're trying to do.
Yeah, that's a great example of the importance of what you're doing and who you're reaching and just that future perspective that's going to be positive, for what we do. It's just so important to keep on this. We have a class that we hold. It's normally in July. Mm-hmm. This year's 1st of August, but you reach these people that sometimes they're overwhelmed by what they see on YouTube, or they're overwhelmed when they look at a catalog of all the equipment, and they just need somebody to just kind of break it down and just kind of walk them through. And then they find out it's really not as complicated as what they think. But from the outside looking in, it's pretty overwhelming, Well,
so. I think to build on that, like, for some reason, and I don't know how it is where you guys are at, but everybody that gets into trapping, the first thing is like, I want to catch a coyote.
Right.
I want to have chasing it. And I'm like, they're not a mythical creature and there's no magic bullet. We can catch them and we can teach you to catch them. But I'm like, let's target a raccoon. Let's get some DP. So, because guys, and you're tenured trappers and you're seasoned and you've done it. It gets old checking empty traps. I don't care how much you like it or how much you like being out there. And I'm all about God's creation and I like seeing birds flying and all. But if I've checked empty traps all week, I'm like, you know what? This is the pits. So, but I love it and I'm too stupid to quit. So I'm going to keep doing it. But you get the new guys that are like, I want to catch coyotes, and they do it for a week or they do it for 2 weeks. And then you see on Facebook Marketplace a whole trapping kit that they're selling because it's like, man, this trapping stuff it's not for me. So I try to tell those guys, let's get you 6 DPs, let's catch you some muskrats, and let's just start working on coyotes. But some of them they're knee deep in like, hey, I just want to catch coyotes, and that's the way it is. But right. You're right though, in terms of like, if you go into it saying I want to catch coyotes and you go to YouTube and you type in coyote trapping, you're going to get 100 different things, and 95 of those are going to be from stuff that you really shouldn't be fooling with. So like with your class and my class, and of course I'm going to try to get to your alls one day. I think I think it coincides with my beach trip every year. So that kind of makes it, I'm not sure how Leanne's going to be if I try to miss the beach trip to go to a trapping thing, but see if we can make that happen. But, when you can show somebody hands-on, this is how you bet a trap, and tell them how important it is that this trap is solid, it don't move. Because and I know you guys spend time with folks too, but I spend time with guys and they tell me, they'll message me on Facebook and they'll be within an hour, half an hour, whatever. I'm like, hey, let's just get up and see. Well, my trap's bed is solid and I'm doing all this. And then you actually get to spend time with them. And it doesn't take you long to realize, well, this is why they're not having much success, because what they see on YouTube is not the same as actually getting your hands on that trap and showing those folks how to bed that trap and giving them some ideas in terms of, and then when people start having a little success and they start sending you pictures, or they start, hey, look, I've caught something, then the wheels get turning and you're actually making some ground with these folks. But these guys that just, I don't know how much you guys deal with it, but I have some guys and girls who message and it's like, I can't catch it. I'm doing this, this, and this. And I say, well, try this, this, and this. And they say, I've already done all that. At some point, I'm kind of like, look, I love people and I love helping people. But if you're doing all this and you're not catching, I don't know what else to tell you. I think sometimes people think, like I said, there's a magic bullet, or there's this certain bait or lure, or there's this certain set that if you do this, this is exactly how you're going to catch. And guys will say, well, what sets are you running? And I've never trapped with you guys. I would love to trap with you guys one day. But a lot of times when I look at a location, I don't say, well, I'm putting a dirt hole in. I put my pad down, I get on my knees, I get my trap, I start looking at, I mean, I obviously check the wind as much as you can and see how that, but I start looking at what's there, whether it's a stump or whether it's a tuft of grass or whether it's, and then I start constructing a set based on what's there. Now, obviously, yeah, sometimes we go to a location, we make a set, but I try to tell guys, you know, it's an art, and the more you do it, the more you realize you don't always just say, well, I'm punching this exact set in. You build your set as you go. And I will be honest with you. So there's been times, say I put, you know, 4 dozen, 5 dozen traps in a day or in 2 days or whatever, and I'm tired and I leave and I'll see one last location and I'll say, I need a set there. And my heart's just like in it halfway because I'm tired and I'm hungry and I'm wet. And I throw some set in that's like, yeah. I don't want to make it sound bad, but I look at it and I'm like, that wouldn't catch Ray Charles. I mean, that's the worst looking coyote set. And lo and behold, I show up to check the next day, and guess which set catches first?
Yep.
It'd be one of those ones that you're like, I'm glad I put that in, but boy, that looked like garbage when I left there.
Yeah. That happens all the time to us, especially when you're like, it's the end of the day and it's getting dark and you can't see as well. And you come back the next morning, you're like, oh, what was I thinking there?
No doubt.
Yeah, it's like the turkey hunter that doesn't really sound that great, but
yeah,
he calls the turkey in. I mean, it's not, you know, so
yeah. I think anybody that's not done that hasn't been trapping very long.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
That's like, you know, the guys that say they don't catch possums or they don't have misses. I'm like, you know what? You're either lying or you haven't trapped very long. If that's, you know, well, a lot of times we want to show all just the good stuff. I caught, you know, 5 coyotes today, but they don't show all the misses and all the trash and all the stuff that you went through. And I think sometimes I'm all about, you know, posting your stuff and showing your stuff. I think sometimes that's discouraging to new trappers when they think that these guys are like, they've got a tailgate full of coyotes. And I've done it before, but you got all these coyotes that you showed. And of course, the more seasoned I get and the older I get, of course, I'm only 43. I like to think I'm young, but my kids tell me, hey, Dad, you're kind of middle aged now. But as I do get older, I do realize sometimes we mean well and we like to post that stuff, but at the same time, sometimes for the new guys, when they're busting their humps and they're out there every day in the mud and they're sweating, they're, you know, freezing their butts off or whatever, and they're not catching, sometimes it's discouraging. So, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't post it. If you're proud of what you're doing and you post it, and I think as long as it creates a positive light on trapping, post it up. I just know as I get older and the more I trap, I kind of get away from, you know, I'm gonna post all these pictures because I think sometimes it's detrimental to some of the younger folks that are trying to get started.
Right. I mean, we get the call all the time. It's like, I've got my sets out and I'm not catching anything, and it'll be like the second check or the third check, and they haven't caught anything yet. And of course, like, what am I doing wrong? Well, you're not doing anything wrong that I know of at this point. And then you ask them, well, how many traps have you got set out? And they'll say 3 or 6. And how many locations? And it'll be one location. So it's like, I mean, you got to give that at least 10 days probably before you can even make a decision on what's up, you know, or longer.
And I think a lot of times, like these younger guys, and even some guys that have been trapping for a while, you know, they see people putting up these numbers and they're catching hundreds of coyotes or whatever. They don't realize that these guys may have 150 sets out,
right?
2% or a 3% catch rate, you know, and then they're thinking, well, I got 6 MB 550s out there sitting on a good location and I'm not catching. Well, obviously the percentages are against you if you're not running. You know, I know that a couple of years ago, we were idiots. I'll never do it again where we caught so many coyotes. You know, I had at one point 250 sets on 5 properties, and I was having to check before work and during lunch and after work. And my father-in-law was checking and Leanne was checking because we just didn't cover that much ground. But, then you have people saying, well, you caught this many. And I'm like, but if you're going to catch anything in numbers, I don't care whether it's raccoons or whether it's beaver or whether it's fox or coyotes. First of all, you have to have them. And second of all, you got to run a lot of sets. And a lot of folks don't understand if you're running 6 traps and in 3 days you catch 6 coyotes, you better quit your job and you better trap for a living, because that's just not, it's not, well, for me anyway, I'm definitely not that good. I mean,
Right.
I don't catch them like that.
Well, I mean, you kind of mentioned it earlier, but to catch a lot of fur, you have to look at a lot of empty traps. I mean, that's just, and if that 2 to 3% success ratio, it may not even be that high by the end of the season if you factored
100%.
all your trap night checks and stuff in.
I agree.
It's pretty low.
I
So
agree. I mean,
one
but
thing
you
we
can't-
run into is a lot of guys don't start trapping until they get done deer hunting. So deer hunting winds down
Yeah.
Thanksgiving or thereabouts. So they start trapping in December, which is in my view, is a very difficult month.
100%. I agree with that.
And so they're already at an uphill battle right out of the gate, and we try to explain to them that this is not the ideal time, but and so they're pushing through it. But you're right, a lot of that, a lot of those people fall by the wayside, unfortunately, because of just circumstances that are within their control, but not really in their control. They could wait or they could start earlier, or whatever. But
Well, I know, like in my neck of the woods, I don't know about you guys, but like our season doesn't come in until it's always the first Saturday in November. And of course, land trapping goes out the last day in February. Well, I know some folks that they can either trap year round or their season comes in early October. And I know a lot of times what happens is, like, especially a new guy will get started and, we go through pup dispersal. And I don't mean this in a bad way, but those pups they're a lot easier to catch than those dogs that have been around the block a few times.
oh yeah,
And of course, these pups start, they start kind of doing their own thing and they start moving. The weather's still warm. You're not dealing with freeze ups. You're not dealing with a dog that's got one thing on its mind, and these guys get started and they catch a few coyotes and it's like, hey man, I caught 4 coyotes, or I've done this. And I'm like, well, that's great. Well, then Charlie, like you said, you get into December, you get into January, the modus operandi changes for those coyotes, the weather changes. And that same guy 6 weeks later is messaging saying, I haven't caught anything. and so then as trappers, and I know you guys are doing the same thing. That's when you kind of try to tell them, you can't trap the same way all year round. I mean, things have to change in terms of whether it's your bait and lure usage or whether it's, how you're antifreezing your sets and things of that nature. But guys, that's just stuff that comes with, comes with experience. And,
right.
And luckily there are trainings and things out there that help people, but none of them take place during the heart of fur season. And none of them take place in December and January where the weather has turned to complete garbage. So they're setting the trap, and I'm not against it because it's what I do. I help folks and you guys help folks. But when you're setting a trap in July or October at my thing, and the weather's beautiful and it's, it's a little different than it is when you're out there setting that trap and there's snow on the ground and you're having to chisel a trap bed and things of that nature. And sometimes folks just can't handle it. They just can't do it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we just run into that all the time, and the ones that push through it are the ones that are probably going to stick with it for a few years at least, or be a lifelong trapper. But as we said, that rate of guys sticking with it for an extended period of time is minimal. I will say too that we've got this idea out there with these guys that say, I just want to catch a coyote. And they'll go catch a coyote and they'll trap for 2 or 3 seasons, and they've basically accomplished what they wanted to accomplish. And they didn't get ate up with it. They enjoyed it while they did it. But they satisfied their itch, and they've got their coyote mount or their coyote skins tanned, and that was enough, So there is a certain amount of that out there as well. And those guys generally, I have found, are the ones that push through it, the bad weather or, whatever, but they're kind of on a mission.
Then there's those of us like us who are just too stupid to know any better. It's like, you mentioned earlier, and I hate to say this, but some of my greatest opposition comes from hunters, from whether they be deer hunters or whether they be houndsmen who hunt rabbits or raccoons or bear, whatever. And, the thing is about those, I don't really want to call trapping a sport because I think it's a way of life. But the thing about that stuff is, like, if you wake up and there's a foot of snow or there's 6 inches of snow and it's blue cold out, you can go back to bed, or like if you wake up and you're a deer hunter and it's pouring the rain and you're not hunting in the blind and all you've got to stand, all you have to do is say, you know what, I'm going back to bed.
Yep.
Well, the trapper that's got traps out, if he's worth his salt and doing what he's supposed to, and obviously we know there's folks out there that they give everything a black eye, but the trapper that legitimately cares about his target animal and the animals out there, you get up and you go. And there's been times I've got up and the weather's so nasty. I'm like, you know what, I have lost my mind. I'm driving to the trap line and I'm like, I've been stuck up, and of course I've had vehicles break down, and I've been out there on Christmas Day, and I'm thinking this is just completely, I just love it though. I love the chase. I love the opportunities that it gives me. And I think, trappers are, like I said, we're a special breed.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And that's probably partly based on just missing certain brain cells. I
I agree with that. Dropped on your head as a baby.
Yeah, I think so. So
What's your favorite animal to target, Nick?
Oh, I just love, I cut my teeth with, I love muskrat trapping. Growing up, my dad never was big into, like, we never went to conventions. I didn't know anything about, we didn't do conventions and we didn't do fur sales. There was a local guy. My dad was a Boy Scouts leader. Of course, me and my brother were Boy Scouts, and, the guy that was the local leader with him was a veterinarian, and he actually was a fur buyer. I don't even remember his name. I was just younger, and he would always sell them around. We would catch muskrats. My dad would take them and he'd come and say, here's what you got. And of course, as a kid, anything that he gave, I'm just like, we're catching animals. We're wading around the creek, putting apples on a stick and catching a rat, and somebody's giving us a little bit of money for it. So I love rat trapping, but I don't know. I'm not a biologist. We don't have any rats. We just like when I was a kid, it seemed like you could walk the creek banks and you could just see there was just rat sign everywhere. And of course, we do have a lot of coal mining property with refuge ponds and things of that nature, that if you look closely there, sometimes you can find some rat sign. But I'm going to be honest with you, and I guess it's maybe, as I mentioned earlier, I'm getting older. I'm getting a softer heart. I know there's just a few of them there, and people laugh and tell me I'm a sissy, but those few that are in that pond, I just like, they're not worth anything. And I just don't really want to go. I don't want to get them because I just don't want to kill them. And obviously you can use the carcass for bait and keep the hide. But to answer your question, I just love coyotes. I like the beaver trap. My ADC business, most of my work, because we do have so many coal company properties, it is beaver trapping related. And I like it because, beavers, they pay good and they're generally not hard to catch. Every now and then you run into a beaver that makes you want to pull your hair out. But for the most part, they're not difficult. But it's just something about that coyote. It just never gets old to me. To pull up on a property and to see a coyote dancing, I don't know how many I've trapped. I just know I still get this giddy feeling of like, man, we did it again. And I guess maybe if I ever lose that and it goes away, I might kind of step back a little bit and say, yeah, I need to reevaluate my priorities here. But I just love coyote trapping. I love the challenge, the cat and mouse. I love the ones, and I know you guys probably have them. And, during trapping season, sometimes there's coyotes that keep me up at night. And the one that's, worked your set from here, the one that did this, or the one that you missed. And I like to say I've caught all those, but there's been some trapping seasons, first seasons in, and it's like I never did catch up with that rascal. But coyotes are kind of that's kind of my bread and butter. I like to trap coyotes.
So are you an MB 550 guy?
Charlie, you're gonna get me in trouble.
No, I'm not.
So if I say I'm an MB 550 guy, I'll have a meme later saying I'm a fanboy. That's like as soon as I say but no, I do like the 550. I mean, I think there's good traps out there. I mean, I think there's traps that folks either should stay away from or they should modify some if they're going to use them. And I'm not going to get into. I think the 550 for what it offers straight out of the box, especially to a newer trapper, it's set up great for as far as the foot damage and the I think it's a great coyote trap. Now I obviously have. I mean, I have some Sterlings and I have some no BS traps. I love all those, but I trap a lot of public property, meaning, I live in coal country and I don't have in my neck of the woods, I don't have big farms. I don't have little farms. Nobody runs cattle. So it's pretty much you're trapping in the timber or, really where you can put up numbers in Southern West Virginia are these old coal strips. And I know you guys are familiar with it. You may not be in coal country, but they cut the top of these mountains off and they take this coal. And then part of that process is they're required to reclaim it. So they go in and put just enough stuff back on there to make stuff grow. And, trail riders like that area. They ride lots of ATVs and side by sides. And so for me to lose, I have to run a lot of drags because it's tough to anchor in that stuff. So if I'm running if I'm stupid enough to run a Sterling, with 10 foot of chain and a few swivels and some shock springs and then a tracker on there, I've lost a $70 setup if some yahoo comes by and he either spots an animal or he knows enough about trapping to know, hey, I'm not saying I want to lose 550s. But obviously, like on public land, it doesn't hurt my heart nearly as bad to I lost that one than it does to lose something that. But I think for the money that you put into it, I don't know how anybody, whether you're a fan or not, and I'm not going to get into who did what. I don't know how you can argue against it. I mean, it's very durable. It's very good for the coyote, and they hold up year after year. So to answer your question, and I'll have a meme later. Yeah, I'm an MB 550 fan.
Well, we are too, and we don't keep it a secret that there's no perfect trap, but it meets a lot of needs. I
agree, and it's like I'm a fan of. I don't want a 1.5. When I'm targeting the coyote, but a lot of guys want the bigger traps, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But I've always been a proponent of I dig a little tiny trap bed. And I don't force my trap in that bed, but I almost dig it so small that you kind of got to wig. I mean, you really kind of got to move that little trap to get it in that hole. I don't like to spend a lot of time digging a big hole, putting the trap in there, and then having to pack a bunch of material in there that's going to freeze or it's going to thaw and freeze and thaw. So I like the 550 offers the opportunity. It's big enough to be a really good coyote trap, but it's not so big that you got to put a crater in the ground to get that trap in there. Because I've always said, and I tell some of these guys I take online with me, I'm like, just remember, the bigger that hole is, the more you got to put back in there to get that trap solid. And I think the 550 just very seldom do I have any kind of issues in terms of jaws or the dog. I mean, obviously, and you guys will agree with this, it is a great trap. If you use it over and over and over and over, and you don't at some point do a little modification or a little adjustment, a big coyote will eventually wear that trap out. But by gosh, I can run that trap. I can catch, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 coyotes on that one trap compared to some of the other traps on the market. Like you catch 1 or 2 coyotes and that dog's busted up. Those jaws have popped out. And I kind of alluded to that earlier when I kind of got back in the game. Some of those traps against these big eastern coyotes, they don't. I mean, I don't know how it is where you guys are at, but we don't do it often. And I don't want to be the guy that's like, obviously, I'm not going to sit here and say we have 70-pound coyotes. I like get a kick out of the guys I'm 6'4" and I got this dog out here and this thing's 200 pounds. And I'm just like, But we do. I mean, we have had over the years, we have had a couple coyotes push 50 pounds. I mean, they're at the 50-pound mark, and a big 50-pound animal in a trap all night, if that trap's not put together very good, a lot of times it's not going to do very well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, typically our coyotes here are 28 to 32, 35, but we do get that. I've never caught one that pushed 50, but 40 plus is not unusual,
But still, I mean, even a 40-pound coyote, if it's in a trap for a while, you guys know, I mean, they chew on them things and pull on them and run circles. I mean, if even a 40-pound coyote's a big enough animal that if it's not a good trap, it's either going to hold it and be in pieces by the time you get to it, or sometimes, you see these guys that are heartbroken because they get there and the trap looks like just a pile of metal. And I think sometimes you got to look at, you get what you pay for.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, that's really good advice, is just buy the best you can afford, and if you can only buy 6 instead of 12, you're better off doing that than, so.
Or I could be the guy that on these new guys get started, I could say, you buy a dozen 550s, and then when things don't work out, sell them to me for half price. That's like the guy selling the snake oil. I'm not going to be that guy, but I mean, obviously, and I tell them the same thing you do, Charlie, like, buy what you can. But if that means only buying 6 really good traps compared to a dozen, because what's going to happen is they're going to spend the money and buy a dozen. And then by the time the season's over, if they have any success, they're going to be left with 6 traps and have to buy more because the traps just don't, they just don't hold up.
And if you use, for the guys that use a trap that is lesser of quality or lesser of whatever, a trap that's going to require a fair amount of work really to get it up to snuff, then these guys will, if you've got that baseline, then you will really appreciate going up to the higher end trap. I mean, that's especially the thing about.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, that's the thing. I mean, a 550 is considered a higher end trap, but it's a great trap, as you mentioned, for a beginner because it's so easy to use. It doesn't require messing with it. So,
yeah. And, I think you also have to, and some folks don't want to talk about it, but you also have to a certain degree at times, especially the further you get into it, the more you understand how things work, you want to start trying to look at investing in traps that are good on the animal's foot.
Exactly.
And, obviously where I'm at, we don't release coyotes. We're like, if we catch a coyote, whether it's going to be a fur market coyote or whether it's going to be something that we're just going to gland or whatever, that we're going to dispatch those coyotes. But we only have, I don't know how you guys are, I don't know if you have a season, we can only catch 3 cats. So I just want to make sure, especially when it comes to those cats, and like if I catch a fox, because we just don't have any, now we'll find maybe a pocket of reds here or there. Unless the landowner is adamant, I mean, I'm going to turn that fox loose, and I want to turn the majority of all those female cats loose. And I just want to do my part in terms of being ethical to the animal that I'm targeting, and making sure that once I do hook up with it, that I'm using the type of equipment that, if I decide, hey, I'm going to turn this animal loose, I don't have to worry about the thing. And I know I may be getting soft, but I don't want to worry about, that animal struggling to feed itself or feed its offspring or whatever. And I just, whether that means you triple or quadruple swivel and you use a trap that's set up good for an animal. I think the more you get into it and the more you realize and see the foot damage from one trap to another, if you have any integrity at all, at some point you have to say, what, I want to do what's best for the animal that I'm trapping. Right. And, guys, you're always going to have, and it doesn't matter whether it's trapping or hunting or fishing or whatever, there's always going to be those folks that they're I don't know how to put, I don't want to offend anybody, but they really shouldn't be involved in the outdoors because they don't care about the animal. And for me, I don't want to ever be that guy that's like, I don't really care about the animal I'm targeting, because I think you kind of lose a sense of, why you're out there. And again, right. I just want to make sure that when I trap that animal, if it's an incidental or something that I'm not interested in harvesting or dispatching, in good conscience, I want to be able to turn it loose knowing that it's going to have a good chance because its feet are still in good shape.
Right. We're on the same, exactly.
Yeah.
Right,
right there with you.
Yeah. When we have very few red foxes, like, as you said, and we just turn, we're going to turn them loose,
Yeah, just because you care doesn't make you soft, just so you know.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I know, but Justin, there's guys out there that like.
I know it.
Like, they see you turn something loose in a video, or you talk about turning something loose, and then you get these messages like, "I'll never turn." I mean, we turned a coyote loose a few years ago to do a little video about. I tried to.
Yeah, I watched it.
Yeah, and I'm motivated to do it because the Lord told me to, and I was shocked at the number of people that couldn't see like what we were trying to do. I mean, like, these are trappers. These are legitimate guys in the industry. They're sending me messages like, "You're an idiot," and I'm like, that's the good thing about trapping is once that animal, I become the owner of that animal once I trap it in my trap. And whether I want to put it in a cage or make it a pet or whatever, as long as I'm abiding by the laws, it just amazes me at the number of people that, you're soft and you're this, and I've been trapping for 50 years. I've never turned a coyote loose. And I just want to say congratulations. I think that's, whatever. I mean, I'm happy for you, but we got to learn as trappers to, we've got to get on the same page. And as long as my take is, as long as you're legal and as long as you're ethical and you're doing what you're supposed to, do what you want. If it makes you happy to dispatch the animal or it makes you happy to turn it loose and what, do what you want to do. But like I saw guys the other day, and I'm not mentioning names. There's one specific trapper. He said a month ago on social media, and he's trapped for years. He said, "I'm not trapping this year. I'm not spending all my time and money and gas." And, guys, let's be honest, the fur market's in the tank right now. I mean, I think all of us with any sense is going to say, you're not going to make a bunch of money trapping. But this man's saying, "I'm not going to trap, So I saw this guy the other day. He's been trapping a few years and he's starting to have some success. He caught a fox. It was a red fox. It was flat. I mean, it was as flat as a pancake. I mean, it was like, and obviously it was blue. I mean, you could look at the animal and tell. And so this man who said 2 months ago or a month ago, 6 weeks ago, "I'm not trapping this year," he's on this site pretty much giving this guy down the road for being out there trapping. And I'm sitting here. Of course, I'm not going to get in some he said, she said on Facebook because it just does nobody any good. But I'm thinking it's fine if you don't want to trap. I mean, that's fine. Nobody cares. I mean, keep your traps in the building. But be supportive of the ones that's the guys we should be happy. Like trapping is struggling right now. And if there's guys that are willing to go out there and trap and spend the money, because you're not going to make money, you're going in the hole. We should be cheerleading for those folks. Hey man, because those are the guys that are still buying traps. They're still buying bait and lure. They're still buying equipment. They're out there every day. And it just kills me that all the stuff I see, like we should be. I think we get the mentality it's never going to happen in my state. It's never going to happen here. And I live in a redneck state. I mean, we're like a bunch of hillbillies and rednecks. And I even have people here say, "Well, they'll never take trapping away, or they'll never take this away." And I'm said, "Well, I bet the guys in New Mexico, some of them said the same thing. And the folks in Colorado and the folks in, California is one of those, I won't get into that, but so I just think we need to realize as outdoorsmen, I mentioned earlier, as crazy as PETA is, they're united. And they may all be crazy, but they're in a single file line showing up at these court cases to fight against us. And we're over here fighting about, I'm not trapping, so you shouldn't be trapping a flat red fox. I can't understand it.
Yeah. And I've mentioned this numerous times before. We'll be at a sports show or something where not a trapper show, but like a deer classic or something. We'll have a booth and guys will come by and they say, "Oh, I just love to trap, but I don't trap anymore." And of course it's based on no money in the market. They quit a long time ago. So, well, first of all, you didn't love to trap,
right?
And they're at the deer expo buying who knows what for $1,000 bow setup and right. All the boots and all this equipment is like
$500 camo jackets.
Yeah, I mean, it just comes down. It's all relative. This is what I enjoyed doing, and I don't expect to be bashed over that. Just like I'm not going to knock you for your what you've got invested in going deer hunting, or it's all just what you enjoy doing. So
Well, I think my dad told me one time, like you can't put a price on memories. I mean, you
Right.
just can't. And then as you see people pass away and things happen in your life, those memories are something that's like, man, I am so glad that I spent the time doing this with the folks me on the trap line. I don't know what the Lord has in store for me tomorrow, but if I don't get to trap anymore, I have memories of things that I've done with the folks that I care about, or even if it's by myself, that you can't put a price tag on. You just, I know one time Leanne and I, it's been years ago, when I was a little more stupid than I am now. I mean, I'm packing, like, it's coal company property. And of course, now I have keys to pretty much all those gates, but I'm packing a pack in for a mile to trap these coyotes, and we caught this small bobcat. And of course, I was dispatching the coyote and dealing with it. And Leanne tells me, she says, I hear a cat down there. And I'm like, you hear a cat? And she's like, yeah, and I smell the cat. Of course, Leanne has a nose like a bloodhound. I'm nose blind. I mean, I guess my nose has been, on those coyotes and all this stuff, and I just can't smell like. So she's like, I smell a cat. Well, we get down there, sure enough, there's a small bobcat. It's probably a 15-pound female. And, we only hit 3, and I'm looking at this little cat, and I'm like, I'm not going to kill this cat. And Leanne's like, well, I got bad news for you, but your catch pole is in the truck. And it's a mile back to the truck, and I'm looking at this cat, and you guys know, I don't care if it's a 10-pound cat or a 30-pound cat, they are mean. I mean, they are like, so she's like, what are you going to do? I was like, well, I need to try to turn this cat loose. And I'm looking at this thing thinking, if I get this thing by the back of the neck, all those legs are coming up on my arm. I mean, this thing's going to. So I get this harebrained idea. I said, I saw a 2x4, the old coal company property, shut down, it's not operating anymore. So there's all kinds of stuff laying around. And I find this, it's about a 6-foot 2x4 laying on the ground. I told Leanne, I said, I'm going to pin this cat down. And when I pin this cat down, I want you to hold it down. And then I'm going to go in there and I'm going to turn that cat loose. And she's like, and she tells me this often, but she's like, Nick, this is a bad idea. And I was like, well, I'm not killing this cat, and I don't have any other way to turn it loose. So I pin this cat down, and she comes over there and she's holding this, and the whole time she's saying, I don't really want to be a part of this. And I'm like, well, you're here with me, and we're going to do this. And guys, I said, you got it? And she's like, yeah, I got it. I reach over in there, and of course, it was calm while we were just standing there looking at it. Well, when that cat saw me coming over there, and I reached down there to get a hold of that trap, it had a high-speed come apart, and that thing was all over the place. It was all over me, and I'm running away. Leanne's throwing the 2x4. We eventually got it. We used the 2x4 and we got it. But that's the kind of stuff that's like, if I never trap another day in my life, I mean, I can sit and think about those things regardless of my circumstances. And guys, it makes me smile. I mean, it makes me happy to think about. That's the kind of stuff that happened on the trap line.
Yeah.
And for these folks that say, well, the fur market's in the tank, I'm not going to argue with you. Yeah, I mean, you probably need to be very selective on what if you're in this to make money, depending on your location, you better be very selective about what you dispatch. I'm not in it to make money. I mean, I make memories every year that you can't put a price tag on. And I could just sit, and maybe one day when we can meet each other, we can sit and do all this. And I know you guys the same way. You just got stuff that happens out there. Maybe it's just amongst you guys, but it's just stuff you talk about that really puts you in a good place and makes you happy. And that's what trapping does for me.
Right. Yes. I mean, yeah, that and you remember bad stuff too, but you remember it looking back on it as, just another experience.
Yeah.
Like we broke down in the middle of a national forest last year and
it wasn't funny at the time.
It wasn't.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, things always have there's a different perspective in terms of where you are in time and how you
exactly.
Live.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think we've all been there.
Yeah. Yeah. So
that's great. You got any last words there for us, Nick, before we sign off? Thanks for joining us.
I guess I don't want to pass up an opportunity to make a shameless plug. I am one of those YouTubers. I mean, I don't run a website. I do run an ADC business, but I will say, and I would like to think I definitely am not the guy. I don't like to toot my horn. I mean, I just think, you need to be humble about But I do think that the stuff that we try to promote on our channel, if somebody's new to trapping or they're looking to try some different things, I do think there's things on there that if you're out there and you're listening and you're willing to take a look at it, I want it to be helpful to you. It's BIGGSTime Trapping on YouTube. And if I could do anything for anybody out there that will help you along the way, I honestly don't care one bit to talk to you on the phone or do it through Messenger or texting or whatever. And I just want to thank you guys for reaching out and giving me an opportunity to promote what I love to do. And anytime I get a chance to put trapping in a positive light, whether it be with you guys or in a magazine or whatever, I'm going to take those opportunities. So my hat's off to you guys for what you're doing. And I look forward to the day where not behind this screen, but we can actually shake hands and spend some time together and shoot the ball a little bit.
Yeah. That'd be fun. That'd be great. So yeah, we sure appreciate you being on, and more than definitely appreciate what you're doing. I mean, we need more people out there doing what you're doing, but fortunately you and others are doing that. So, and we can put the YouTube link below.
Yeah.
We'll put the YouTube link below the video.
Well, like I said, I know it's a shameless plug, but I appreciate you guys.
Yeah. No, exactly the same. So we appreciate it.
All righty.
All right, Nick. We'll hopefully see you down the road, if not online.
All right. You guys take change, guys.
All right. Take care.
Bye.